Early in 2011, 17-year-old Lily Donovan's life took a darker turn. At school, she faced relentless bullying from Samantha Matthews, the 19-year-old cheerleader who seemed to have it all: popularity, influence, and a mean streak that set her apart. Samantha was cruel in both obvious and subtle ways. She would push Lily in the hallways, knock her books from her hands, and spread rumors that further isolated her from classmates. Lily tried to avoid Samantha, but her efforts were futile. It wasn't just verbal abuse. Samantha's tactics were psychological. She would humiliate Lily in front of others, making her the laughingstock of their small high school. Lily's mental health began to deteriorate. The isolation became unbearable, and the school, though aware of the bullying, did nothing to intervene. The teachers turned a blind eye, and her classmates were either too afraid of Samantha or indifferent to Lily's suffering. It wasn't long before Lily felt she had no one to turn to. No one except her father, Mark. One evening in late February 2011, Lily finally broke down. She shared everything with Mark, hoping for some kind of resolution. She explained how Samantha tormented her daily, how there seemed to be no escape. 43-year-old Mark, who had always been protective of his daughter, felt a surge of guilt and anger. He had been so focused on providing financially and keeping things together since the death of his wife that he hadn't noticed how deeply Lily was struggling. Determined to put an end to Samantha's behavior, Mark planned to approach the cheerleader directly. On March 1, 2011, after one of Samantha's cheerleading practices, Mark waited outside the school. He approached Samantha, hoping to reason with her, to ask her to stop bullying Lily. But that conversation didn't go as planned. Samantha, always quick to assess a situation to her advantage, saw an opportunity in Mark's concern. She noticed how vulnerable and desperate he seemed. What began as a tense conversation soon shifted into something more manipulative. Samantha, aware of her own allure and control, flirted with Mark subtly at first, but then it escalated. She knew how to play with people's emotions, especially someone as unsuspecting as Mark. It wasn't long before he fell into her trap. What had started as a father protecting his daughter quickly spiraled into an affair. Over the following weeks, from March through May 2011, the affair grew more intense. It became their secret, hidden behind closed doors. Mark, already battling loneliness, found himself drawn deeper into Samantha's manipulative hold. He convinced himself that it was something he needed to escape the emptiness he had felt for so long. At first, he told himself it was harmless, that no one would ever find out. But Samantha wasn't just using him for her own gain. She reveled in the power she had over him. As the affair deepened, the bullying toward Lily only grew worse. Samantha became more ruthless at school, emboldened by her secret relationship with Mark. She saw Lily's suffering as a game, and the more Mark became involved with her, the less attention he gave to his daughter. Lily would try to speak to him, to tell him about the new torment she faced at Samantha's hands, but Mark brushed off her concerns. He started to dismiss Lily's complaints as exaggerated, perhaps even looking for excuses to avoid the topic altogether. The guilt was there, but Samantha's influence was stronger. Lily, meanwhile, noticed subtle changes at home. It started with the way her father's mood would shift unexpectedly. His absences, the late-night phone calls, and the hurried trips out of the house that didn't quite add up. By mid-May 2011, Lily had begun to suspect that something was seriously wrong, though she couldn't quite piece it together. Samantha's presence, once just a nightmare at school, began to invade Lily's home life as well. Samantha would visit under the guise of study sessions or stopping by after practice, but Lily knew something was off. Her tormentor was now a regular visitor in their home, flaunting her control over both Lily's school life and personal space. Samantha became bolder, visiting Mark's house regularly. Each time she entered, there was an unsettling air of control about her. Mark, for his part, was blind to it. He was too far gone, too involved to see what it was doing to Lily. By late May, it had become a routine for Samantha to visit in the evenings, sometimes staying late into the night. Lily, hearing footsteps and hushed voices, grew more anxious, and began to put together the pieces. Her world was unraveling, and it seemed that no one, not even her father, cared. In this time, Samantha's influence over Mark was obvious. He stopped defending Lily entirely, growing more distant with each passing day. By June, the cracks in their family life were growing wider, and Samantha's visits to their home had become more frequent and more brazen, almost like a statement of her control over both father and daughter. It was only a matter of time before everything fell apart. May 15, 2011, marked the day when everything in Lily Donovan's world shattered. She had been suffering in silence for months, enduring Samantha's relentless bullying at school while receiving no comfort or protection from her father, Mark. Emotionally drained and increasingly distant from her once close bond with him, she decided to use his phone, hoping to find some answers for his recent behavior. What she found instead were explicit text messages between Mark and Samantha. Her hands shook as she scrolled through them, each message more incriminating than the last. The truth hit her like a ton of bricks. Her father was having an affair with the very person who tormented her daily. In that moment, Lily felt completely betrayed. She confronted Mark, her voice breaking as she demanded to know how he could do this to her, how he could betray her in such a cruel way. But Mark, instead of feeling guilt or shame, turned on her. He accused her of invading his privacy, shifting the blame onto her rather than owning up to what he had done. His anger was sudden and unexpected. He grounded Lily for going through his phone, dismissing her pain entirely. Mark's reaction was a clear sign that his relationship with Samantha had clouded his judgment. From that point on, Mark didn't hide the affair. Instead, he allowed Samantha to visit their home more frequently, flaunting their relationship in front of Lily. It became a form of psychological punishment for her. Each time Samantha entered their home, Lily felt a fresh wave of torment. Her home, once her sanctuary, was now a battlefield where she felt isolated and powerless. Samantha, meanwhile, delighted in her newfound power over both father and daughter. She would sit casually in the living room or kitchen, acting as if she belonged there, all the while giving Lily condescending looks that reminded her of who was really in control. By early June, the situation had reached a breaking point. On June 10, 2011, Lily decided she could no longer endure the constant humiliation. Desperate for help, she took a bold step and contacted Samantha's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. She exposed the affair, detailing how their daughter was not only bullying her, but also manipulating her father. The Matthews, horrified by the scandalous nature of the situation, immediately took action. They knew that if the affair became public, it would destroy their family's reputation in their small, close-knit community. They were a respected and influential family, and any hint of impropriety could ruin them. They confronted Samantha, expressing their outrage and disappointment. The Matthews demanded that she end the relationship with Mark immediately, threatening to send her away to college to keep her out of trouble. They issued her strict warnings. Under no circumstances was she to see or speak to Mark again. They hoped to contain the situation before it became a full-blown scandal. Samantha, however, didn't react the way they expected. Instead of submitting to their demands, she grew enraged. She blamed Lily for everything that had gone wrong. In her mind, Lily had caused the downfall of her relationship with Mark, the only person she now cared about. The thought of losing control over him only deepened her resentment. She began to fixate on Lily, seeing her as the sole obstacle between her and Mark's continued affair. As the days passed, Samantha's anger festered. By June 20th, 2011, she had devised a plan to deal with Lily once and for all. Samantha convinced herself that the only way to regain control over her life and keep Mark to herself was to eliminate Lily. She knew that if Lily were gone, everything would go back to the way it was. The plan she came up with was simple, yet deadly. She would lure Lily to an isolated location under the pretense of wanting to make amends. Samantha, cunning as ever, enlisted the help of a few of her cheerleader friends to help her stage the meeting, framing it as an elaborate prank that would scare Lily. The friends, unaware of the full extent of Samantha's plan, agreed to help. They didn't see the darkness brewing beneath Samantha's surface. To them, it was all part of the fun, an adrenaline-fueled game that would put Lily in her place. But for Samantha, it was much more serious. She knew exactly what she intended to do. On June 25, 2011, the plan was set in motion. That evening, Samantha messaged Lily, pretending to extend an olive branch, asking her to meet at an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. Lily, still vulnerable and hopeful for some kind of resolution, agreed. She thought that maybe, just maybe, Samantha wanted to make things right. She didn't know it was a trap. When Lily arrived at the location that night, the atmosphere was tense. The old, abandoned building loomed over her, casting long shadows in the fading daylight. The building, once a factory, was isolated from the main roads, and few people ever ventured there. As soon as Lily stepped inside, Samantha and her friends were waiting. At first, the tension was masked by the pretense of reconciliation, but it didn't take long for Samantha's true intentions to surface. Her anger boiled over, and she accused Lily of ruining everything, of destroying her life and her relationship with Mark. The confrontation quickly escalated, and before anyone could stop it, Samantha attacked. She grabbed a blunt object, a metal pipe that had been lying in the corner of the room, and struck Lily with it. The first blow shocked everyone, but Samantha didn't stop. She continued to hit Lily, her rage blinding her to the horror unfolding around her. Lily, defenseless and terrified, fell to the ground, and within minutes, her life was taken. The friends who had come to help Samantha, realizing what had happened, panicked and fled the scene. They had never intended for things to go this far. Samantha, left alone with Lily's lifeless body, finally realized the gravity of what she had done. Panic set in as she looked around the room, the silence deafening. Without a clear plan for what to do next, Samantha left Lily's body in the abandoned building, hoping that no one would find it for a while. She ran, fleeing into the night, desperate to distance herself from the crime. The murder was complete, but the consequences would only just begin. The morning of June 26, 2011, started like any other day for most people in the town, but it would soon become unforgettable. A passerby, taking a shortcut through the abandoned building, came across something that immediately sent chills down their spine. A body lying motionless in the dimly lit corner of the building. It was Lily Donovan. Her lifeless form, surrounded by evidence of a violent confrontation, was immediately recognized as the scene of a serious crime. The passerby wasted no time, calling the police, who arrived within minutes to secure the area. Detectives quickly observed signs of foul play. Lily had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to her head, and the blood at the scene indicated that she had been attacked viciously. The abandoned building, though usually desolate, now became the center of attention for local authorities. Detective Emmanuel Owens, known for his sharp instincts and meticulous attention to detail, was assigned to lead the investigation. From the beginning, he suspected this wasn't just a random act of violence. The lack of forced entry and the personal nature of the injuries suggested that this was more than a random attack. However, with little physical evidence left behind at the scene, the case was not straightforward. There were no obvious fingerprints, no murder weapon in sight, and no clear witnesses. The police knew that they would need to dig deep to find out who was responsible for such a brutal crime. As the days passed, Detective Owens began his investigation by questioning those closest to Lily. He first interviewed Mark Donovan, Lily's father, who was visibly devastated by the loss of his daughter. Mark explained how Lily had been suffering from bullying at school, and he pointed to Samantha Matthews as the main perpetrator. This was a crucial lead, but as the interview progressed, Owens noticed inconsistencies in Mark's behavior. His grief seemed real, but there was something off. His reactions were either too rehearsed or too erratic. In an effort to uncover more, the police obtained phone records from Mark and Lily. It wasn't long before they uncovered a shocking truth. Mark had been involved in a secret affair with Samantha, the same girl who had been bullying his daughter. The The revelation opened a new angle in the case. Not only had Mark failed to protect Lily from her tormentor, but he had also been intimately involved with her. This affair complicated everything, and Detective Owens quickly realized that the crime might be connected to this twisted dynamic. Owens continued his interviews, this time focusing on Samantha and her group of friends. Samantha, though shaken, maintained her innocence, claiming she had nothing to do with Lily's death. However, under pressure, one of Samantha's friends started to crack. The friend revealed that the group had been involved in planning what they thought was a prank to scare Lily, but things quickly spiraled out of control. This testimony, combined with phone records showing conversations between Samantha and her friends on the day of the murder, provided key evidence for the investigation. By July 5th, the evidence against Samantha had become overwhelming. Detective Owens, armed with enough proof, ordered Samantha's arrest. Samantha was charged with first-degree murder. Her parents, desperate to protect their family's reputation, immediately tried to control the narrative. They hired high-profile attorneys, hoping to keep the details of the affair and the murder out of the public eye. However, the case was already making headlines. The affair between a 19-year-old cheerleader and a 43-year-old man, combined with the tragic death of his daughter, became the scandal of the year. Samantha's arrest sparked outrage in the community. While some saw her as a troubled young woman who had made a series of bad decisions, others viewed her as a manipulative and dangerous individual who had intentionally plotted to murder Lily. Mark, meanwhile, became the subject of public scorn. Although he had not been directly involved in the murder, the community blamed him for his involvement with Samantha and his failure to protect his daughter. His reputation was in ruins. The trial officially began on July 15, 2011. The courtroom was packed, with reporters and locals eager to hear the details of what had happened between Samantha and Mark, and how it had led to Lily's tragic death. Samantha was charged with first-degree murder, while her friends, who had played minor roles in the plot, faced lesser charges as accomplices. The prosecution presented a compelling case. They laid out the timeline of events, showing how Samantha had lured Lily to the abandoned building under false pretenses, intending to harm her. Phone records and witness testimonies were crucial to their case. They also introduced forensic evidence that connected Samantha to the crime scene, further solidifying their argument that this was a premeditated murder. Mark's role in the trial was complex. As Lily's father, he should have been the one seeking justice for his daughter's death. But his affair with Samantha cast him in a negative light. When he took the stand, he revealed the details of the affair, expressing his deep guilt over how his actions had led to Lily's death. He admitted that he had been manipulated by Samantha, but the damage had already been done. The public and the jury viewed him with a mixture of pity and anger. His testimony painted a picture of a man who had lost control of his life, allowing his affair to blind him to his daughter's suffering. After weeks of testimony and mounting evidence, the jury reached a verdict on August 20, 2011. Samantha Matthews was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge, taking into account the nature of the crime and Samantha's lack of remorse, sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial ended, but the impact of the case would be felt for years. Samantha's friends, though not directly involved in the murder, were sentenced to reduced terms for their roles in the crime. Mark Donovan, while not charged with any crime, could not escape the consequences of his actions. His affair with Samantha had been the catalyst for the entire series of events, and the community could not forgive him. He faced civil lawsuits from Lily's surviving relatives, and the media continued to hound him for interviews. His life, once that of a respected single father, had unraveled completely. Unable to bear the weight of the guilt and the public's disdain, Mark made the decision to leave town shortly after the trial. He would never fully escape the shadow of what had happened, but moving away was the only way he could begin to rebuild what remained of his shattered life. The tragic story of Mark Donovan and Samantha Matthews is a grim reminder of how manipulation, betrayal, and unchecked desires can spiral into chaos. The consequences of secrecy and neglect destroyed a family and led to an untimely death. But we have an even more devastating case where a narcissistic stepdad abuses teenage daughter and mother takes revenge.